Hello, welcome to part 3 of the Helldivers 2 Thermite Grenade Blender tutorial series. In the previous video, this is where we left off. Let's start off by placing our 3D cursor somewhere there, just so we can, in fact we don't even need to do that. Let's just make sure our cursor is at the world origin, which it is. If it isn't, then press Shift S and click Cursor to World Origin. Okay, so let's add a cylinder. Again, I'll be using my add-on in certain places, so feel free to do that if you have it. If not, just do Shift A and add mesh cylinder. And I'm going to go with 16 sides again. Actually, let's go with 32. Okay, let's bring the radius right down. And the height as well, the depth. Just zoom in there. And let's bring that up on the Z as well, just so we can see it in situ. So we want to leave a bit of a gap there again. So let's make the radius a touch bigger, holding down Shift for finer control as you're changing these numbers. Let's go about there, 0.16. And let's change the depth again, something like that. As I said, this one's pretty straightforward, so I'm actually going to move that up. Excuse me, I'm going to move that up. Am I playing this? No, why can't I see it? Oh, there it is. Goodness me, I've got the 3D cursor selected. Medium point, let's move that up a little bit. The reason being, if I tap into edit mode, I'm going to select faces here and delete the one at the bottom. And the top one we can leave, and we need to add a loop cut, so Control R. Let's add a loop cut about there, like so. And we want these ones to be inset, okay? So switch into face mode, Alt click, and I'm going to press Alt E, which will select extrude faces along normals. Well, we'll bring up the menu anyway. We just click that one there. And then if I move my mouse up and down, you get this. The normals scaling along their, sorry, the faces scaling along their normals. I could speak English today. So yeah, let's do that. And I've just realized this is actually going to be thinner than this part, but that's fine. We'll fix that in a minute. So let's select that edge loop. We don't need that, and delete those. Tab back to object mode, and let's move that down and see how big that gap is now. Yeah, it's quite big. So I'm going to scale that up. I might as well do it in object mode actually, like so. And I've done that in object mode for a reason, because now we have non-uniform scale. So you want to avoid that. So apply the scale to that, and you can do that with Control A, and that will open the apply menu where you can select scale, and that will get rid of the non-uniform scale, or apply the scale, I should say. So let's select object again and tap into edit mode. Switch to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad. And I've just realized I've left my keys again not being displayed on screen, so let me just turn that on. Right, so in the front view, I'm going to switch to wireframe mode and over to vertex select mode, and drag a box and select those, and let's just bring them down to somewhere like that. I'll switch back to solid mode. By the way, the shortcut for this menu is the Z key. Cool, we've got that. I feel like this is a little bit too small, top part, so I'm actually going to make those larger. So I'm going to switch back to front view, back to wireframe, select these vertices here, although we don't want to select the ones underneath the cover there, so I'm going to Alt Shift and click that to deselect it. Now we've got just those vertices there. We'll switch back to the front view, and I'm just going to press scale. I could do that, but you can see it obviously scales it on the Z axis as well, which we don't want to do that. So I'm going to press S for scale and then Shift Z to exclude the Z axis. So let's go something like that. Let's turn off X-ray, sorry, I didn't have it in wireframe mode. So now we've got that plate kind of on the top there. In fact, that might even be a little bit too big, so I'm going to S Shift Z and bring that down a little bit more. Something like that. Yep, that looks better. Okay, so with that done, all we need to do is add a generate subdiv modifier. You can click that here as well. Let's do 2 divisions. And let's right click and do shade smooth. And there's our modifier. Whoops, there's our modifier there. And it looks like we've made a bit of a mess there, haven't we? Because we don't have any support loops at the moment. So you need to add support loops to hold the shape, basically. Usual procedure. This is a common modeling technique that everyone should know. So I'm going to start by selecting the top face and pressing the I key to create an inset. Something like that. In fact, I'm going to delete that face now. Should I? No, not yet. Let's do that later. Let's now switch to edge select and alt click that one, alt click this one. And I want to alt click the one here, but I can't see it. So I'm going to turn off the subdiv modifier. Alt click. And we have those 3 selected. Press Ctrl B. Scroll your mouse wheel to get 2 segments and give that a bit of a size there. And the important part to remember here is the shape. You really want that to set to 1 because that will help control the subdiv once it's turned on. And all that's doing is adding edge loops either side of the edges we've selected. So if we tab back to object mode and press the subdiv modifier back now, turn it back on, you can see we have this really nice smooth shaded object. Transparency, actually, I did actually make a slight modification to this after I recorded the video, and I think this part here I added later. I just created an inset here. I did the same on these actually, just for a bit more eye candy, I guess, because they look a little bit bland, but you don't need to do that. Just thought I'd share that with you now. Let's switch back to Blender, the tutorial file. So, I mean, this is pretty much done. So I may as well, while I'm here, add this groove. Gives it a little bit more interest, I think. So we've already got this inset there. So I'm going to press the I key again and bring that in just a touch. That would do. And at this point, I think I would create another inset. And let's put it there for now and then delete that face. And like before, in the other videos, I'm going to alt click. Just going to save my file quickly. I'm going to alt click this edge loop here and head up to face and grid fill. And that will give us a lovely grid fill there. I think I may have turned on simple blending. Yeah. In fact, I think I forgot to click that on the previous time I used it in the part 2 of this series. In the previous video, I should say. Right, so with that done, let's have a look at this groove we're going to add here. So I'm going to switch to face mode. Alt click just here to select this face loop. And we can just simply press E to extrude, and that will go vertically up and down. You could bring it up as well, actually. That'd be quite nice. But I'm going to bring it down just a touch. And to see how deep that is, I'm going to switch to the front view, go to wireframe mode. You can see that it's only that deep. So we may as well bring it down to that line there. And I can do it visually. That's probably okay. But we've already got vertex snapping selected there. So I can turn this on here. And as I click this, oops. Gosh, I thought it was going to crash there. So as I move on the Z axis, I can move my mouse pointer over a vertex and it will snap in that axis. Back to object mode now. And with our subdivision service modifier on, you can see we have this lovely groove, but it's a little bit too soft. So like before, we need some supporting edge loops there. So let's turn off our mod and select this edge loop just here and this one and give that a very small bevel. So Control B. In fact, it might be too, yeah. Let's do that. The problem I'm worried about now is this is too close to that previous edge, the extrude edge. So I'm going to select these edges that go right at the bottom. Oops, wrong one. Just these ones here. Right in that groove there, right at the bottom. Switch to front view. And let's go back to wireframe. Just bring that right down. Oops, still got snapping on, haven't we? Let's move that. So yeah, turn that off. Let's bring it down to about there. And switch back to solid mode. Now we have more space for our bevel, just there. And we've already got one there as well. So you can see, oops, there we go. Got one there and one over here. So we turn on subdivision now. We get a much cleaner bevel at the top. However, we don't get a nice clean bevel. If I show you from underneath the object or inside the object, you can see that just goes rounded. We don't have any holding loops there. So a simple trick there, we're not going to see it. It's hidden inside this the groove. So I'm going to alt click that one, alt click the other one, head over to the item menu and increase the value to 1. The increase value, I should say, to 1. And you can see that's giving it a much harder shading now on those corners. And let's now turn our attention to this piece, which looks something like this. Okay, so let's start off with, now like before, I could borrow from this shape here to do that. So let's do that. I'm going to select faces here. In fact, while we're here, let's turn off the subdivision modifier. And I'm going to alt click there and select those that face loop. And Shift D, right click to leave it in place. P to separate, and tab back to object mode. And now we've got that ring just there. Of course, its origin point is going to be up there. So I'm going to right click and do set origin to geometry. And that will hopefully put it in the middle. So I think it has. So let's tab into edit mode. You can see this glitchy effect. And that's happening clearly because we've copied those from the existing geometry. So they're overlapping. So we need to select all of these faces by pressing A on the keyboard. Make sure they're all selected. And I'm going to press scale. And again, I'm going to press Shift Z to exclude the Z axis. So I'm going to bring that in just a little bit like that. Now that glitching is gone. The next part is simply going to be selecting this edge loop at the bottom and bringing it down a touch. Something like that. And we can do E to extrude, and don't click anything. Press the S key for scale, and that will just flare it out like that. Let's see how far I took the previous one. Well, not too far actually. Yeah. So let's do the same here. So that's gone clearly too far. So I'm going to press S for scale and bring that in. Something like that. In fact, let's just bring this down so we can actually see it. In fact, no, we can isolate that with the /? key. Now we've got this really weird looking hat shape. Let's tab into edit mode and we can do E for extrude and then Z. Bring that down a little bit, like that. Do the same again, EZ. Bring it down like so. And then S for scale. Something like that. Let's switch back to this one and see how far. So yeah, you've got quite a chunky bit there, and it's not too deep. So that's probably going too far. And this is clearly not big enough. So let's drop that down, make it nice and obvious. So something like that so far is good. Don't worry with the fact that it looks really smooth. That's because we have smooth shading on. If I shade flat, you can see what that looks like. But I'll leave it like that because it's easier to see. So going back to this, let's select this edge loop and E to extrude, S for scale, and bring that in to give it a bit of a lip there. Let's go with that. And that's it. I think also we need to do E again and then Z and bring that up inside a little bit. Because we may need to hide the part that goes in there. But we'll come back to that later on if that's the case. There's only one thing we need to check, and it's good practice to check these things as you go along when you're modeling, is the one I've already mentioned is the non-uniform scale. That causes a lot of issues for different areas of in Blender, so definitely check that. The other one you should always check is face orientation, okay? And that's under this menu here at the top, face orientation. If you click that, you can see we have some red, and red's fine, but only if it's on the inside of the model, not the parts that are facing you on the outside. So that's actually bad. So let's turn that off. And on my add-on, that is here in the top right there, as is wireframe. So with that selected, you can see we've got red everywhere there. I'm going to tab into edit mode, select everything just by pressing the A key. And here I have recalculate normal, and that should be able to recalculate it, or Blender should, in the right way. If it doesn't, you can select everything, Alt N for November, and then recalculate outside, or press flip, and that will just do exactly that. So that's what we want. So let's turn face orientation off. Okay, so the next step is let's turn on our subdivision modifier. Let's turn smoothing on, shade smooth, right click shade smooth. Again, that's very bad, and once more we need to add some support edge loops. So I'll quickly do that. You can see now we have a lovely solid shape. There is still one more piece to do. Let's have a look at this one again. And that is these little rivet things. I don't know what they are. So let's do that. So for this one, as you'll probably know, if you press 7, you can view from the top view. If you press Control 7, that flips it to the opposite side. So it goes from top to bottom. So with that, I'm looking upwards now onto this object. So let's tab into edit mode. And like before in part 2, where we created this screw component, and we're going to do the same thing here basically. So I'll tell you what, I'll start with, let's put 3 edge loops in here. That gives us a bit more geometry to work with. And back to 7, Control 7. Switch to face mode. Let's select these faces here. So we've got those selected like that. So 7, Control 7 to flip the view. With those selected, I'm going to press the I key to create an inset, like so. And what I'm going to do is select all of these faces again, actually. Let's just do that again. I'm going to delete those. So we're left with a hole in there. And I'm going to switch to vertex mode and alt click just here. In fact, whilst we're here, we can use a really cool loop tools feature, and that is space. And the reason I'm going to use that is because if you notice here, the gaps between the vertices, they're all very different, all very different lengths. So if I right click and do loop tools, space, that should space them out evenly. Obviously that's not the result that we want in terms of its shape, but that's okay. We're not done yet. So now I'm going to use loop tools again, and this time select circle. And you have this. Or we can try this rotation value there in the actual circle operation. So I might just do that in this case. So let's try and find something that looks reasonably okay. So what I'm looking for is this line here to be as straight as possible. If I put it up to the top of the screen, there, I think it dips a little bit too low there. So holding down Shift, I'm going to click and drag this. I think that's close enough. So it looks like it's 12.1 something degrees. Let's just zoom out there. And I think that would do. We don't have to get too fussy here. Having said that, I don't think it will be, because that would then be flatter than this area here. So I'm going to undo that and let's just leave it like that actually. So I want to select that edge loop again, E to extrude, S for scale, give that a bit of an inset like that. And then I'm going to press F to fill, and then E to extrude. About so deep. And what I'm going to do now is Shift D, duplicate that bottom face there, right click to leave it in place, and then press S for scale. That's going to be the size of the rivet that goes in that hole there. So with that face selected, I'm going to press E to extrude again. And obviously you can bring that out as far as you like. I'm going to use the snapping, vertex snapping, to bring that. In fact, yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to...
A few minutes later.
I'm playing the animation again, aren't I? Right. That's why I can't see the gizmo. Now, if we do that on like this, obviously we can't move that in this direction. That's because we have it on global transforms. If we put it to normal, we have this n-gon selected, and the normal of that is pointing this way. So I'm going to click that blue one, and then as I do that, press the control key and hold it down, and snap to another vertex there. Cool. Let's go to edge mode, and I'll click that one, go back to my select box. And with that one selected, Control B and give it another bevel. Like that. In fact, this edge loop here is a little bit too small or too close to that. So I'm going to alt click it and select it and press S for scale. And bring that out like that. And we're just missing an edge loop here now, a holding loop there. So Control R, let's click in there and do that. And I think that's that. Having said that, remember we duplicated that face earlier on, this one, to make this one here. We don't need that anymore, so we can press delete and get rid of that. The other thing we need to do here is the bottom loop there. Just let's add a mean crease of 1 to that. So when we turn on our subdivision, it kind of works. Doesn't look great if I'm honest. So let's do that another way. If I want to work in there, and this thing is this getting in the way here. So I'm going to select face mode. Let's select this face first actually, and delete it. And select this edge loop, and do face grid fill, and switch to face mode. And with the mouse pointer hovered over this area, I want to press the L key, and that will select all of the linked faces. And I'm going to press H to hide it, so you can see a bit better in there now. Let's turn off our modifier. Obviously, if I tab back to object mode, it unhides everything. You can see there. Let's select this face, press I to inset, something like that. Let's clear that mean crease there. I'm going to delete that, and then again, selecting this edge loop, face, grid fill. Maybe we can space these out a little bit better. So if I do that, I can do S for scale, but I don't want to scale it in all the directions. And I think I'm going to press X, scale it in that direction only. Something like that. So we need to add a holding loop here, is what I meant to say. Just to help with the shading there as it goes into that crease. That really makes a difference, I think. And while I'm at it, I might as well select these. And just press S for scale. Make this a little bit bigger. So that corner becomes, or the shading becomes a little bit tighter. Anyway. Let's, to bring back the faces we've hidden, just press Alt H. And that would bring back the ones we've hidden. Let's turn on our subdiv. And that looks pretty good. Of course, if you want to go higher than 1, just switch it to 2, and you get a much sharper highlight on the edges, or more geometry basically. I'll leave it at 1 for now, unless I spot any obvious errors. So now that we've done that, we can duplicate that piece there, and put it in the other areas that we need. And as before, we've duplicated those, but we do have overlapping geometry here. So we've got vertices that are shared in the same space. You can see if I move this one, it goes all over the place, as does this one. There's a big gap all around this. Easy fix, select them all by pressing the A key and hit the M key and then select merge by distance. You can see I've removed 42 vertices. You can also do that on the BB TOOLKIT add-on, merge by distance. Oops, there we go. So let's now turn on our subdiv modifier. And that's done. Right, let's come out of isolation. Well, with that done, let's head over to the previous file and let's work on the next part, which is this part here. Just underneath that part we created. And it basically looks like a cylinder again. And it's got some loop cuts and then we have some extrusions or insets there. And a bottom lip and a top lip. So I'm just going to add a cylinder. And of course our pivot point is still set to, or the transform point is set to 3D cursor. Let's bring that back down to medium point, back to our object. Let me just check on the previous file actually. Let's put that back. So yeah, I thought it was. It's actually on the lip, on the outer part of the lip there. It's not, oops, it's not from there, it's out here. So let's make sure that is the same here. So I want to press 7 and then Control 7 to flip the view. I'm just going to press scale, bring that out like that so it matches the part there that we have, like so. And of course we need to apply the scale because it's now non-uniform. I'm just going to click apply scale. And remember, Control A is the apply menu. So with that done, let's now add the loop cuts. I'm just going to isolate that. And let's select the top face and the bottom face. We'll get to the loop cuts in a second. So top and bottom face selected, press the I key to inset. And give that a bit of an inset like that. Then we can delete these now. And we can do Control R. And I think we want, let's do 2. And the reason being, you can now bevel that with Control B. Scroll the mouse wheel so we only get one segment this time. Let's go with that. And actually, let's select this edge loop there, this edge loop here. And then let's move them up a touch. Like that. We move them up by this value there. So I'm going to copy that. Then select this edge loop and that one, move them down. It's a minus figure, so I'm going to paste that there and put a minus at the front. So it just goes down in the opposite direction. Like that. Right, switch to face mode and Alt click there, Alt click here, and Alt E extrude faces along normals. Move the mouse up and down, we get this lovely inner extrusion. Like so. That's good. We don't seem to have a modifier on that because we created this from a brand new cylinder. So let's add generate subdiv modifier. Let's put that down to, let's put 2 segments for now. Nope, let's do 1 and see how we get on with that. Let's right click and shade smooth. And like before, we need some supporting edge loops. Obviously be careful you don't overlap them inside there. That won't be good. If we turn back on the modifier now, we have this nicely shaded. Right, let's come out of isolation. Let's bring that and snap it up to the base of this one now. So let's make sure we have vertex snapping on closest. If I click on the blue and arrow there for the Z-axis, as I do that, I'm going to press the Control key and move my mouse pointer over a vertex there. That seems to be spot on. Or not, it's actually gone through. Let's do that from the front view then. So click the blue one, move your mouse pointer there, and it will snap to the bottom one, which it has done this time. Right, the next part is even easier than that, thank goodness, and that's these parts here, which are just cylinders, pretty much. Again, with a lip at the top and the bottom of each piece. And there's 3 segments, the 2, and they get progressively smaller as you go down. Don't know why, it's a thing. In fact, let's not do that because we want to make sure the cylinders we add are the same size as these ones. So I may as well borrow from this one again. So I'm going to select the middle ones, Shift D, right click, P to separate, and there we have another object. Goodness me, there it is there. Like that. If we tab into edit mode, we can select the top and bottom edges and press S and Z and make that a little bit taller. Tab to object mode, bring it down. Back into edit mode, S for scale and Z. And let's go for something like that. So we want to snap this now to the bottom of that one. Let's just make sure that's right, yeah. And let's isolate that. Like so. And there you go. Now, I should also add that you may have noticed that this looks a little bit weird with the shading there. And that's because, let's switch to the side view or the front view. When it's subdivided, the subdivision, if I turn it to 2, will go beyond this edge loop here. It will actually go along the side until you can barely notice the curvature. You can see it certainly travels up into the object. So to control that, you want to basically block it before it gets anywhere near that. So let's add 2 loop cuts, Control R, scroll the wheel. And with those 2, S for scale, and then on the Z axis, bring them out, like so. So you can see we've added 2 loop cuts like that. And let's add a mean crease of 1 to those. So by doing that, these edge loops act as barriers. You can see it looks a lot nicer now. Okay, let's come out of isolation mode. I know on this one I did it as one piece, but it should be separate pieces really. Doesn't really matter. Right, we'll come on to these later because I found the better way to do this after the fact, using geometry nodes actually, which is quite cool. So, oops, let's go back to this. And whilst we're here, let's go to the front view. Let's Shift D, duplicate that, right click, and then bring it down to there for now. And I did say these can be progressively smaller as you go down. They don't have to be, but I didn't really want a really long handle on here, so I made them shorter. But I will make this one a little bit shorter. So let's switch X-ray on, vertex mode, select them all, and just move them up, like so. Let's right click and do origin to geometry. So that's that one there done. Let's copy that again, Shift D, and bring it down. I don't really know where I'm putting these right now, just put them anywhere. So this is the second one, let's call that bar 2. And bar 3. Let's tab into edit mode. Front view, X-ray on or wireframe. Select these and move them up, like so. You're probably wondering why I don't just select everything and do S for scale, SZ, because if I do that, you can see I've squashed all of these bevels that we made earlier, and we don't want to do that, which is why I'm doing it this way. So the pivot point is there now. Let's just do set origin to geometry. So there you go, slightly larger, medium, small. Now, the next part is this part here. Again, it's got a lip, a bit of a outer flare, and then straight down, and no lip at the bottom. Let's put that back to where it was. We can see how that interacts. So yeah, the handle part is actually just shy of that on that lip there. So that's good to know. So let's do that. So I may as well use this piece. So I'm going to duplicate that and just move it down like so. Let's isolate that. So we'll isolate these two. Use that one as reference. And we'll tab into edit mode here. Let's get rid of a lot of this now. We don't really need all of this geometry. So I'm going to select this one. Whoops. Select that one there. Alt Shift that one. And then Control Plus on the numpad to grow the selection. And let's get rid of all of those faces. Before I do, I've got all these selected and all these selected. And delete those. Now we're left with this basic shape. Let's clear this mean crease here. Don't need that for now. So back to a basic cylindrical shape. And we already said this is actually going to be larger than this lip here. So let's select everything and then just press S for scale. Tab to object mode. And that's about right, I'd say, give or take. I did that in edit mode this time, the scaling, so we still have uniform scale, which is cool. You can see it's not red there. Right, let's tab into edit mode and select this top loop. Let's turn off our subdiv modifier. And with that selected, E for extrude, S for scale, and bring that in like that. Let's select everything actually and bring it in like so. Yeah, that will do. Now we can select this one. In fact, this one needs to go. If you remember, this one goes out and then flares out and then goes down. So let's put a loop cut here. And we'll select this loop and this loop. And we'll just do S for scale, Shift Z, and bring it out like this. And let's increase these two. Like that. Alt click this one and bring it down. Give it some more length. That's pretty close. Let's turn our subdiv modifier on. Of course, it goes very rounded because we need support loops. So, oops, I keep pressing the wrong button. So, Alt click, Control B, 2 segments, shape of 1, like so. And whilst I'm here, let's add another loop cut here. We'll give it a mean increase of 1, like so. Now, technically, you should add them here as well, but we're not going to do that this time around. You may even be able to get away with adding them to this, like so, and then that could work quite nicely as well. So you could do it that way. Great. So I think that's done. That looks quite large actually, and perhaps not as aggressive as that I've done it in this one. Let's have a look. Yeah, let's go back to wireframe mode, vertices, select all of these. That's going to be a mistake because the moment I move it, we're going to destroy all of our bevels. So then bring that down a touch and scale it up a touch. Go back to solid mode. And now I'm going to get destructive and get rid of all of these edge loops that I added previously and Control Delete to dissolve them. The reason being I want to recreate those bevels so they're consistently placed. So Control B, 2 segments, like so. Let's make all of these ones here, give them an increase of 1. That worked out really well. Next part is this tiny little ring. Move that there. And it also has a lip at the top and bottom. Not too much. In fact, the top one's bigger than the one at the bottom. Let's come out of isolation mode. And we may as well use this piece here actually. It's the same thing. So we'll duplicate that with Shift D, right click and then bring it down. In fact, let's just make sure this is snapped. Bring it down a touch and then hold down Control and snap it to there. Let's make sure that's actually correct, which it is. So now we have this piece. Let's tab into edit mode. Let's get rid of all of our bevels that we made earlier. So we're working with a cleaner piece of geometry. Control delete to dissolve those. Let's turn off the subdiv. Let's select this one and this one. But let's select all of these for now. Oops. Undo that. Select them all and let's just scale them like this. And then SZ. Tab into object mode and snap it to the bottom of that one. So now we have that. If I turn on X-ray, you can see we have the lip inside there. So I'm going to bring that in actually. I'm going to select that and press S for scale and bring that just before this one here. Something like that is good. Turn X-ray off and Alt Shift and select those. And add a bevel, Control B. Once more, we're going to select these ones and add a mean crease of 1. And there you go. That's pretty easy, I hope. We've done that piece. We've got that bit there. Worry about that later, this part. Then we have this piece here. Let's select this object. Shift D to duplicate it. Go to front view. Let's bring it down. Leave a gap, remember. And tab into edit mode. Go to X-ray mode. Let's go to wireframe actually. And let's just select these top vertices there, including the bevel of course, and move them up. Something like that. With that done, let's go back to object mode and set the origin to geometry by right clicking. So now we have this object here. Let's snap it to the bottom of that one. Again, make sure it's not clipping through. I don't think it is, yeah. And so yeah, just 2 cuts in there is fine. So Control R, give 2 loop cuts. Select these edge loops, Control B to bevel them. Let's actually create one segment, like so. And with those faces selected, we can quite simply do Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, and move your mouse out. Something like that is okay, I think. If we tap out of edit mode, you can see we have these grooves now, or ribs if you like. Now you could give them a little bit more form. So these are rounded on the outside, that's nice, but they're tight on the inside. So at the moment this is all smoothed by the subdiv modifier. So what I'm going to do is add these edge loops here. Let's add a mean crease of 1. And if we tap into object mode and turn the subdiv on now, you will get this sharper edges there, but the shading does look a bit odd. Let's turn off cavity, check that. Yeah, you can kind of see it looks a little bit weird there. So the best thing to do there is add a support loop there. You can see the shading changes as you move that around. So bring that fairly close to about there. You could do the same here if you want to. I don't think I will because that's going to be rounded off anyway. So I'll leave that as is. Why not? We need two cuts here, one at the top, one at the bottom. So let's do Control R, add 2, and then scale them up vertically. So SZ, like that. Make those quite nice and tight in there with the shading. And let's add one more loop cut there, like so. There we are. Pretty neat that, and simple. Now these are exactly in the middle, and there's a larger gap there and here, but you can move them around if you want to. I'll just leave them like that. I think that looks pretty good. And then we have this piece at the end here. Now, in fairness, I don't know if this piece is actually part of the original model. I don't think that it is, but it kind of made sense to me to put that there. Maybe that's clipped onto some sort of belt or contraption. So I added that anyway. So that's one piece there. Let's do that as well. So let's start with that ring again here. Let's copy that one. Shift D, right click. And let's bring it down in the front view like that. That would do. I think it's about half the thickness of this, maybe a bit more. So let's tab into edit mode. Go to wireframe mode, vertices. Let's select the bottom ones this time and bring them down to something like that. Tab to object mode and set the origin to geometry. That looks about ish right. Probably, maybe, definitely. I don't know. Yeah, that's fine. However, it's actually larger than this piece there. So let's tab into edit mode. Let's isolate it actually. And tab into edit mode. And we need to make all of these larger. I'm going to do, select this face loop there. Control plus to increase it up to these points there. Top and bottom. S for scale, Shift Z to scale it out on the Z axis like that. Let's have a look at that. Let's come out of isolation mode. Yay, not too bad. I think that would do. So let's select this edge loop here. I'm going to scale it up just to bring it somewhere like that. So let's press F to fill. So now we have a very large n-gon here where we need to make 2 holes that will then get bridged in this kind of fashion, right? Like this. So we could use a boolean for that actually. And I might just do that for this exercise. I didn't do that in the first video or my first few attempts at doing this, but maybe that's a good idea. Okay, so let's do that. Let's isolate this object by pressing the / key, question mark key. It's got a top view this time, so we can see it from the top because we can see through it. And let's add a couple of new objects. So what shall we add? And you could actually add a torus, couldn't you? I'll show you what I mean. So if I select this face here and then do Shift S and place the cursor to the selected object, so it puts the cursor in the middle of that face. Switch to object mode. And let's add, I'm going to add a torus. I won't use the add-on this time. I'll just do Shift A, mesh torus. That obviously puts it at the origin point, which is what we want. But this is clearly way too big. So let's change the size. This always gets fiddly, this bit. And the minor radius. So maybe something like that. But don't click away yet because this is way too dense. for us. Now, before I change these values, notice the faces are mostly square. That's because we've got 48 there and 12 there. So in this configuration, this creates square faces. If we change it to 36, you now get elongated faces. So we don't want that. We want to try and keep them as square as possible, whatever we do with these numbers. So if it was 48 like it was before, that's 4 times more than 12, right? So let's make that 6. So 4 times 6 is 24, and there's 224 there. And sure enough, we've got square faces. All right, let's go with that. I'm going to click away now, so we've lost those options. And we want this rotated 90 degrees. So let me rotate that 90 degrees on the X. Sorry, I'm going to rotate it on the Y actually. So I'm going to select that, hold down Control, and in the top left up here, you can see the rotation angle. I want 90 degrees, like that. Obviously you can rotate it here anyway, just press 90 in the Y. Trust me to complicate things, right? Okay, so let's tab into edit mode, front view, and clearly we don't need all of these faces there. So I'm going to select those like so, like that, and delete those. And now we have this. Now you could just leave it like that. Maybe that's been welded on or punched through or added, but I like to think of it as being molded, molded as one piece. So we're going to save that. In fact, we don't really need to do a Boolean with this either, actually. In fact, I probably won't need to do that. So first of all, let's switch to the side view, 3 on the numpad, and let's bring this object down about, make it 2. I'm trying to see the height of this times 2, so maybe something like that. Tab into edit mode and select these edge loops at the top, like so. And let's press E to extrude, bring that up on the Z axis. Don't forget to press Z. Bring it up something like that, and then do Shift R to repeat that. So we need these top ones to be flush with the bottom of that base there, or the base of that part there. So to make sure that's actually correct, let's go to wireframe mode. You can see it's slightly off. Let's select these again. Use the move tool, and don't forget we have got snapping on. I turn it on like this time instead of pressing the Control key, and snap them like that. Let's select that object, and then this one. So select the torus first, the other shape we made second, and press Control J to join them. Now we join these together. This has inherited the modifier, of course, but we didn't shade that smooth. So let's just right click and do shade smooth. As I said, you can leave it like this if you want to. That works fine. However, what I will do is I want to make it one piece. So let's turn off the modifier, just in case. So I'm going to select that face there, and I'm going to delete it. No. Why would I do that? Aha. Let's select this one with that edge loop there. And let's select that one there. So we've got these two selected. Now before you do anything else, let's actually change this transform point to individual origins, because we've got 2 separate parts, right? And the next part I need them to act separately. And I'll show you what I mean. So if I press E to extrude and then press S, they scale out from their own individual origins. So let's just do this the old-fashioned way, which is cool. And let's select this edge. Let me keep it in 3D view actually. let's select that edge there and this edge there and press F to fill it. Let me select these these edges there, press F to fill. Let's do the same on this side. Now, the fact that I said that, you're thinking, well, you could just mirror it, do half of it. You're absolutely right. You can do that. So feel free to do that if you want to. I'm just going to fill it like this because I quite enjoy the process, if I'm honest. Let's select these and F. Ta-da! We're getting there. Right. Now you could actually Alt-click that bit there, this whole edge loop there, and press F to fill it. And the same on this side. And that's okay, because if I turn that on, it's absolutely fine. Ta-da! I've got to stop doing that. And the reason this is fine, even though it's a big horrible engon, is because we have a large, well, doesn't matter how big it is, we have a flat surface. If you didn't have a flat surface, we'd probably be in trouble. Let me show you why. We select some random faces here, and let's put that to, oh, it is on global. I'm upside down though. If you move them like that, you can see that doesn't work at all, because it's no longer a flat surface. Let's undo that. So that's fine, you can leave it like that if you really want to. If I turn on the wireframe, that's what the subdiv modifier will be doing to that, which is really messy. And that's fine if you're rendering, doing static renders like this. But if it's a game object, obviously you're not going to do this, it's insane. This might be your high-res model to bake from to your low-res model, but it's not how you would do it for a game asset by default. So I think I like to keep things tidy. So let's turn these back on like that. And let's turn off the wireframe. In fact, let's turn off the modifier as well. And I'm going to tab into edit mode. And what I want to do is, first of all, let's make a cut with Control R there. Let's make 2 cuts. Why not? Let's do 2. And let's leave it like that. And all I'm going to do now is get the knife tool. So press K and click on this vertex there to that one there. Right click and then press enter. And that puts a nice cut there. Now we've got a quad there. So you can see where I'm going with this. You can just go around and make some cuts. Another way to do it is to select the vertex there and maybe here and press J to join. And that will also create an edge and a polygon there, of course. So you can do it that way as well, like that. We might as well apply the mirror modifier now. So let's just do that. Apply. And if we turn wireframe on, optimal off, we've got a much nicer topology now. Simply by adding those cuts that we made earlier. And obviously you can make this much more, or much better than I did. But that's fine. And the fact we have an engon there really doesn't matter, because Blender will cut it, slice it anyway, and it's a flat surface. However, for completeness, I'm going to do K for knife tool. Click there, 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 right click. Right click and enter. There we go. Tidied that up nicely. And that'll give you exactly the same result anyway. Pretty much. There. Great. Let's come out of isolation mode. Wireframe off. Cool, we've made some really good progress now. Right, for the next part, we're going to work on those knurled parts in between these elements, where these gaps are. We're going to add the knurly bits. And I'm just wondering if there was 3 actually. I think there was 3, wasn't there? There should be 1 here. a gap there. We'll leave that gap there for now, and we'll come back to that. So we need 3 parts basically of the same thing. Now in the first video, or the first attempt that I did of that, I actually just created the geometry manually, basically. Then I discovered another way to do it, which was using geometry nodes. Something that I don't often use unless I'm scattering things on the ground or that kind of stuff. I'm not a heavy geometry node user. I like to model things. But anyway, I thought that was quite cool, and I decided to use that in this video. So what I'm going to do is copy this object and use that as our starting point. And let's Shift D, right click, leave it in place. Let's move that up somewhere there. Let's switch to wireframe mode, tab into edit mode, and let's select these vertices at the top there. And making sure you switch back to medium point, by the way, here, because previously we had our individual origins. And if we move these up, let's move them up closer to that one, like so. So I'm going to click the blue up and down, hold down Control and snap it to that one there. Let's do the same for these ones here. Move them down and snap it to that point there. So I get rid of the ones at the top, you can see there, and the ones at the bottom just here. So with those selected, delete faces. We also don't need all of these edges. So let's get rid of this one and this one. Is edge loops. And press Control Delete to dissolve them. So now we're left with that. Now we just want to subdivide this now into squares. So I'm going to do Control R and scroll my mouse wheel until we get something that looks like squares. Yeah, that's better. 8 segments or cuts is good. All right, let's head over to geometry nodes. So we already have a subdivision modifier. Let's turn that off. So I'm going to click here and do new, and that will add one, and I'm going to bring that up to the top. So there's our basic geometry node setup. Let's make this window a touch bigger. And we don't need that, so I'm just going to close that one a little bit more. Right, let's switch back to our other file. Have a look how that looks. So there's our group input, there's our output. There's our group input, and there's our output. So we just need a few more nodes between these two. Let's make a bit more space there. And the first thing we want to do is add an extrude mesh node. So in here, we can do right click, and we can do, well, I'm not going to try and find it in here. I'm just going to do Shift A instead and search. Type in extrude, and you can see there it comes up extrude mesh, and we just drop that on the line so it connects it. You can see we now have this extrusion going on. Okay, obviously the scale is there, so you can bring that down. Let's bring that into view. So you can see here we've got the scale. If I increase the size of this box, you can see the offset scale is the size there. That's a pretty cool, pretty good effect. Right, so what else do we need to do? We need to add a scale elements node as well. So once again, Shift A, search scale elements, and drop that in here. And you can see the mesh part of this is connected to the geometry there, which it already is by default. So we can see here we've got top plugged into the selection on this box. So let's connect this to the selection. And if I move that out of the way, we'll ignore the inputs here for now because these are added by dragging this out to here, basically. And then finally, we need a merge by distance node. Let's move that there. And we'll Shift A, search merge by distance, and drop that there. So now we have this. So you can see the merging is having an effect on our geometry. And that will vary on the scale when you decide which value works for you here on the distance. Right, let's head back to this and see what we're doing here. So firstly, I've got a scale of 0.001, and let's ignore that for now. This is connected correctly. Now these two options, let's make sure they're consistent. We want face as the geometry. We want uniform scaling. So here we have face and we have uniform scaling. So that's good. And the reason we don't see this value here on the version I've got here is because we've dragged this out. If I disconnect it, you can see that's what it looks like. But if I connect it here, all these properties, all the properties you see here, basically you plug in from somewhere else, perhaps a center as an example. That will expose it on this side of the object, basically. So you can see there we've got offset scale and offset and scale. That's because we dragged them into this node. Offset scale and scale. Okay, so you can change the parameters there, like so, without having to go into the geometry nodes itself. I'm going to undo that. And the second scale value is the one that does the point, basically, like that. So you've got a lot of control and it's non-destructive, which is really good. So I really like this method. It's awesome. So anyway, get the idea. Let's head over to our working file and let's see if we can bring out, let's drag the offset scale and plug it into the group input and take the scale from there and plug it into the group input. As you see, we've got them exposed over here now. So now it's a case of figuring out these values to make them work for you. So let's bring that quite low, like so. Let's change the distance as well. Let's drag out the distance and plug that into there. The merge distance anyway. Now, if you want to better understand what this actually means, that distance, because we can't see it over here. If I click away and select this object here, and I click this big, well, if I go to layout, for example, and I'm here, I can't see what these actually mean. So what I'm going to do in geometry nodes is press the N key to bring the side panel, and that exposes these group inputs, which are here. I can select one of these and rename it. So I can click here and give it a description. So I'm going to give that merge, distance. And that hasn't worked, has it? Of course not, so I need to rename it here instead. So you can see now over here, it actually says merge distance, which is cool. The scale value, this one is the pointy part. So we could just say point scale. Or the tip, actually. I think tip makes better sense. More sense. And the offset value is how far it extends out. So we could call that size, offset scale. I'll leave it as offset scale. Call that whatever you like if you want to change it. So now we've done that, let's close that. And let's head back to layout. And yes, it does look terrible, but we're going to just play around with these values here and get these to work a little bit nicer. First of all, let's turn down our merge distance. I'll leave it about 0.06. Why not? So there you go. That looks pretty good. It's already off, but I might delete that for now. Let's save that. The other thing I added then is a generate bevel modifier. And we're going to change that to 2 segments. Obviously, it looks a bit weird right now. But that's because we haven't set the size of that. So let's turn this size down to 0 and then very slowly increase it. If I zoom in there, you can see the bevel happening, the turn on wireframe. So if I shift as I drag this, I get finer control. So that's roughly where we want to be, I guess. So you get that. Now we can do shade smooth. And that looks pretty good. The other thing, the problem is that I can't have this top lip extending inwards or at the bottom, because that will also be given this effect by the geometry nodes. So with that selected now, the original one, I'm going to do apply geometry nodes. We turn on our bevel modifier. You can see that's what we've got. So now we can tab into edit mode. Let's turn off the bevel modifier for a second. And in edge mode, I'm going to alt click at the top and select the ring at the top and the ring at the bottom there. And again, I'm going to switch to individual origins because we have two separate rings selected. And I'm going to press E to extrude, S for scale, and bring that in like that. If we turn this on now, come out of isolation, go to the front view. I'm going to copy that with Shift D and bring it down to about there. Let's switch to wireframe mode. So we've got the top of the pieces there, but the bottom of that piece is there, and the top piece there. Now I don't need all of this geometry on this node part. So we're going to delete some of it, as much as we need. So let's think about, I think we have about 2 rows. Let's get rid of 2 rows of that. So let's tab into edit mode. Let's switch to face mode. Let's try that. I'm going to drag a selection box somewhere like that. Then we've got all these faces selected. I want to hold down Shift and make another selection to add to it. Let's select these ones here. Let's make sure we got right through, yeah. And we also need to, let's turn that off for a second. Yeah, so we have those selected basically, right? Let's delete those faces. Now we have a gap. That still works, of course. So we now need to merge or close the gap. So in edit mode, I'll switch to wireframe. I'm going to select all of these vertices on the lower half and just bring that up like so. And then hold down Control and snap it to there like that. But that's completely wrong. Let's move it back down and try that again. So snap. So maybe it's because we've got individual origins. Let's put medium point back on and see if that does it this time. Yeah. Press A to select everything and merge by distance. And we got rid of 32 vertices. So now if we turn on our bevel modifier, we have a shorter stack of knurled parts. What I need to do is move this one up a touch, and this one, and this one. So I'm going to shift select all 3 of those and click on the blue, and then with the Control key held down, I'm going to snap it to there. That leaves the last part there, and I'm going to copy this one. And the issue we have here, as you can clearly see, this one is a very different size needed here. And if I just scale it up, I think I might have done that in the end, but you could just scale that up like this and call it a day. And I think I probably will do that for this video. And the only reason being that you know how to do that now. So now we just need to move this part and this part down and then hit Control, snap it to the bottom of that bar there. In fact, you can grab this part here as well if you want to, so you can see what the result actually is. There, you can see the modifiers there. If you want to grab that as a screenshot, do so now. I'm going to select all that. So let me move it up a little bit. Like that. So, the only thing left to do now is close these little tiny gaps there we have there. So, let's add a cylinder. That's going to be down here. 32 sides is fine. in fact, we can actually, because it's going to be inside there, not very visible, I'm not going to see the top and bottom of it. We may as well make it nice and round. Let's do 64. And let's make the radius something like that. Let's move that up to here. Let's turn X-ray on again. And you can see the recess is in there. So this is actually quite large. I'm just going to scale that down. Leave a bit of a gap, a bit of breathing space there. And as always, I've done that in object mode, so I'm going to apply the scale. And I'm going to tab into edit mode. Select these top vertices. I'm going to snap them to the back of the recess just there. Barely make it out, but it's there. That's probably close enough. Do the same for these ones here at the bottom. Hold down Shift and just snap them. Yeah, it snapped pretty well there. So I might as well set the origin to geometry as well, because it's slightly off. Right, turn X-ray off. That looks pretty bad because we didn't shade smooth it. So let's do that. Shade smooth. And it still looks pretty bad because you can see there, if I isolate that, we still have the top and bottom faces. We don't need those. Type into edit mode and delete those. And that's it. That's our very complicated shape inside there. It's a bit hard to see because I've got the cavity turned on here. If I turn that off, you can see everything a lot clearer inside there. I'm going to switch to the front view, Shift D, and move that up. There. So that was easy enough. That's cool. So I think we've done everything. Just double check we haven't missed any gaps anywhere. I don't think we have. And finally, let's make sure that should be fine, but I'm just going to check it anyway. Right, so that leaves the bit you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. The bit at the top.